Hi, welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Laurie Groh, and today we are talking to Elizabeth Grojean. And so Elizabeth is somebody who truly understands the power of slowing down, not just for relaxation, but we can use that for creativity, clarity, mental health as well. We need this calm in a world that's constantly pushing us to do more. So Elizabeth is the founder of Baloo Living. Am I saying that right? Because I tend to mispronounce.
Baloo, but very close.
Baloo.
Like the
Okay.
bear from the Jungle Book.
Oh, perfect. Baloo Living, a company known for its beautiful and functional weighted blankets that support nervous system regulation, better sleep, and intentional living. So, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for
Yeah,
this conversation.
me too.
I need to hear it myself.
Yes, we all do, right? Like, just if we can listen more and more to any sort of wellness or focus on self care, I feel like it's going to get in there. It's going to get in there. We're going to take it in and we're going to hopefully do something with it. So, Elizabeth, I do like to always ask, what is that origin story? What got you started in the weighted blanket area?
It was a journey with many phases, but I think initially it was just because I felt a sense of discomfort in my life and I couldn't pinpoint it. I couldn't understand what it was. I felt like I was following the rules and doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing to be happy. And I had the job and the apartment and I was living in New York. I was single. I was in my mid 30s. And I just thought, I've worked so hard, but there has to be more than this. And I paid attention to that and I gave time to it. And I would wake up every morning and do journaling, and it only grew louder and louder. And the sense I was getting was that I needed to quit my job and leave everything behind and sort of put myself in a whole new environment because I know that we are a reflection of the environments that we live in. And I wanted to do something dramatic. So I sort of put everything on pause. I sublet my apartment and went to Bali on a one-way ticket because that's about as far away as you can go, I would say,
Yeah.
geographically, environmentally, socially,
Yes.
everything. And
Yes.
I gave a lot of thought, obviously, to that decision before going, and I was very scared. But it's kind of like, what's the worst that can happen? So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So pausing in on that because that's a huge decision, right? Even to take a trip, a short trip to somewhere new, somewhere different, somewhere that's right, not what we're used to. Takes a big step, there can be a lot of fears attached to that.
Very,
And then on top of it, yes, very uncomfortable. And then on top of it, a one-way ticket.
yes. So I had a certain amount of savings and I just wanted to find out like what was I going to find on the other side. And I stayed for 3 months and then I came back feeling super cup filled up, like had such an amazing experience in so many ways. And when I got back to New York, it was reverse culture shock. And so at that moment I had to decide, okay, I'm out of savings. I spent the money. I've either got to get a job right now to start paying and living here, or I can go back to Bali, which was again very terrifying because now I had no savings and no plan. And I felt like I'd taken 2 steps forward and 3 steps back because I
Right.
thought I had found sort of what I was looking for, only to find out that it was superficial. Like I'd lost it upon return. So,
Right there.
right.
People experience that quite often where like a vacation in general, right? We have that peace, we have that serenity, potentially we get that experience when we return. Often there's more stress because
Yeah.
of what we left, right? And more things to do. And you might still have a little bit lingering, but usually within a couple days, people are feeling it
It's
and
kind of
they're right
gone.
back.
Right. So I thought I had made some lasting change in my life just to find out it was vacation buzz. And so I made the conscious choice. I kind of went back into my body to say which decision feels better in my body, not what does my mind tells me is a better choice logically, but my body obviously felt much better about the prospect of going back to Bali than the idea of kind of going back into a cubicle. And I made that decision to go into the fear, but I felt like I was in partnership with the universe, so to speak, and that it would work out. And I did have an intention and a plan. So I wasn't going to kind of bum around. I knew that I wanted to set up a business for myself that I would be able to do remotely. And I know that people do that successfully in Bali because that's who you're seeing there are people who figured that out. And so I wanted to go be around those people, learn from them, and model them. And so that was my intention. And so I did do that. And the pieces came into place. I got freelance work as soon as I was there. So I was able to pay my bills and I was very intentional about that. So this is a long story, I think, of answering the question of how Baloo was started. But that was the genesis of it for me. And that kind of put me on my path of being in a position of trusting myself and tuning in and stop trying to survive or figure out from a survival mindset and more about getting messages from a deeper place. And practically speaking, I took an online course about how to launch a physical product. It's like if I had sat in my cubicle and Googled how to make money on the internet and you've seen like a 10 listicles, it was one of those. It's like,
Yes.
it's not that simple and it's not that easy, but it also does
Right.
work and you have
Yes.
to try it to find out. So it was very scary process of thinking, could it actually work? Because another point is that giving your dreams a chance is very scary because what if your
So
dreams
scary.
don't come true? It's easier to not try and continue
Yeah.
to hold on to the dream. So I was
Uh-huh.
dreaming this dream and I decided to give it a shot and see what would happen. And lo and behold, everything came together almost too easily. So I found a supplier. I mean, I discovered this demand for weighted blankets that existed. I had heard of weighted blankets. The year was 2017, so this was a bit earlier than before when they became very popular. It really was the right time. There wasn't very much available in terms of quality. There was a couple of big brands. They were selling polyester blankets filled with plastic beads. And I got a sample of a blanket. I tried it, and it was just such a profoundly comforting experience that it shifted from being something I saw a financial opportunity and sort of like a freedom lifestyle opportunity to being something that I felt so moved to share with people because I'd been on this whole personal transformation. And this to make me feel so good in my body was something I could see sharing with other people and feeling really beautiful to share.
Yeah. Yeah. It is somewhat of a miracle when that all comes together, right? I mean, and sometimes those things do tend to be a lot easier in some ways than what we expect because we are being guided by ourselves, not by any other thing. And I do think it's important to acknowledge as well that yeah, you did have a plan. I think too, like there can be this fantasy of what that would look like, right? I'm gonna go to Bali for 3 months and I'm gonna, figure it out. And like you said, bum around, just like hang out and something it will happen. But that's not quite how that works. It's work to focus in on yourself and to listen to yourself you know. And what's also interesting about how you described it was being in that survival space when you're in New York, right? And in some ways, it's easy to survive when there's food and shelter and everything really at your fingertips, like in theory.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that we as people want more. We want a purpose. That's a higher need than what we give it credit for. And finding that for yourself is what I would believe is our life goal of, maybe we don't have to have it for our career or job, but what do you want with this time we have? So such an incredible story. I'm glad you shared more about it because I think that in itself is so helpful for people to say, give yourself the time.
Yeah.
What is your body saying? Because our mind can
It's very
tell us
powerful.
our mind can definitely tell us the script that we've been hearing over and over again from our current environment. And the reality is there's limits in that.
Right. It's something I'm thinking about all the time to this day because what I can imagine that I want for myself is so limited by what I already know, whereas what's possible is so much bigger than what we can imagine. But I can't access that when I'm stuck in my day-to-day, now operating a busy business. And the irony of this story is that I'm not living in Bali anymore and I'm not
Yes.
meditating on sunrises and I'm at my laptop for so many hours and I have children, so I'm on duty. So that's why I started by saying this conversation was what I need to hear, because I'm always trying to come back to
Yes.
making that time for myself, and finding that quiet, because that is the internal struggle, I think, is to do that, because there's so much value in what can come up when there's space for it. That's so much bigger than what I can think of with my mind when I'm in my day to day.
Right. Oh, I love that because it is so true. I'm sure everyone can relate to that of, in theory, right, being led by ourself
Mm-hmm.
is a beautiful experience, but there's also the reality of the day to day and how do we come back to ourselves? How do we focus in on ourselves is one of the biggest struggles that I see. It's, oh, I know that this would help. I know that this is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
How do I actually do it?
Do it.
And how do I make it something that's more of a habit and not something that I have to like really force myself to do, that it becomes, oh, this is my day, right? I put it in or I put it in here instead of the ideal scenario, which would be in that state all
Living
day
on
long.
vacation.
Yes, yes, yes. And in all actuality, I don't know if that would be, right? Like that's not actually what people really want. We're kind of
No,
sold that that's what we want.
I saw this in Bali. Like, there were a lot of people that kind of found themselves drifting. Like you were saying, I went back with a plan, and I'm also a bit type A, so that is what I would do. But many people didn't have a plan, and they kind of get a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but untethered, I guess. You find
Hmm.
yourself adrift, and it's not necessarily, it's not fulfilling. It might be, you can distract yourself, you can entertain yourself for a while, but then after some time, we as humans crave variety, and stress isn't all bad. Stress is really good sometimes.
Right.
We need it sometimes. Like, if I had been born with a trust fund, I never would have started my business, but my business has been my vehicle for growth and personal discovery. And I can't imagine the quality of my life if I hadn't had to push myself through so many kind of breakthroughs personally.
Right. I think you're right on track with that of what we think is the goal of life and what truly becomes the goal are very different things. And we do need something to kind of bounce up against. We do need to have some of that stress because, like you said, if we don't have any real need to do that thing, then we become potentially without substance or without empathy, without those like real things that we need to discover with ourselves. Really does help with how we talk and interact with other people. If everything's always great,
Right, right, right.
you know,
You forget what it's like to have pain, or
yeah,
to be, yeah, have empathy for other people, what they might be going through.
yeah, yeah. So I'm going to switch gears. I mean, I could focus in on this all day long, but I want to hear a little bit about, your blankets a little bit. That our time is also for like the understanding of what the weighted blankets can do. I know my father-in-law, shout out to Pops, loves a weighted blanket and sleeps with that every night. And one of the jokes that we talk about is like, if I used his, I think I would be struggling. It's a little bit bigger, heavier than what I would need. So, but going into the weighted blankets and what it does, can you share a little bit about the science behind it and how it regulates?
Yes. So there have been hundreds, or not more than hundreds, of studies on the technology or the mechanism of what they're doing, which is deep pressure touch, which is the same thing that makes us feel relaxed in a massage, or calm, swaddled babies. And it increases the production of serotonin in the brain, which happens automatically, and that's the feel good hormone. And serotonin automatically converts, or naturally converts, to melatonin. So that's why they give us the trigger to fall into sleep. And it reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. So what I love about weighted blankets so much is that, like, I have goals and ambitions of being a meditator. I don't do it that often, but with a weighted blanket, it's like all you have to do is lie on the couch, put it on, and your body's system automatically does the rest. So you don't have to take an active role. It's just automatic. and you can feel it almost instantly. And it can be surprising and relaxing. And the biggest question that people always ask us is like, oh, weighted blanket, isn't that going to make me hot? And I was thinking that when I was in Bali without air conditioning, and also thinking of friends of mine who were going through menopause or perimenopause. And I was like, that's a stage of life too where you struggle with sleep. And so I want to make sure that these are cool and breathable so that you can use them all the time, all year round, and also all seasons of life. And so we use this really high quality breathable cotton, and we've taken out the polyester lining that other brands use, and we replaced that with cotton lining too. And then the weight's just coming from glass micro, like I say micro beads. It's not like microplastic beads. It's just like small little grains of glass. And so they're quite breathable actually, because there's layers between the fabric that's filled with the weighted glass. And so I've even had friends in menopause say, oh my God, I slept all night and I didn't even get hot.
Whoa, that that in itself.
And we have them for kids. Like my little boy is 3.5, now almost 4, and he sleeps with one too, and he calls it his heavy blanket. And I think children are even more sensitive overall, but receptive. And so they work very well to calm them and help them go to sleep. So I've had friends send me pictures of their sleeping kids and say thanks for the babysitter, because they're like on the couch passed out with a weighted blanket.
I love that.
So I think they're just really wonderful. And like, you just can't go wrong with a weighted blanket, but we just made ours with the highest quality of materials. And I was also having my experience in Bali and was like having a bit of a guilt complex that I was going to be mass producing and manufacturing a product and then shipping it and the impact that would have on the environment. So I almost didn't do it. But then I said, okay, if I don't do it, then how can I positively affect how business is done? We're carbon neutral and we offset. We're carbon neutral times 2, basically. So we're trying to offset and pay it forward. And we work with a really neat, I'm going all over the place in topics, but
I'm loving hearing all of this.
okay.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we work with an organization called Sea Trees, and they work on restoring coastal ecosystems, so mangroves and kelp forests, which I've learned actually can sequester up to 5 times more carbon from the atmosphere than a tropical rainforest, because the ocean just has this amazing power to sequester carbon. And they do it with local communities, so they're creating jobs. It's all along the UN sustainability guidelines. So that's our nonprofit partner. And then we also support the pajama program, because I used to work at Scholastic, and their partner was this little tiny nonprofit, and they would donate books for bedtime and pajamas for bedtime to kids living in foster care and homeless shelters, because the founder volunteered at a homeless shelter, and this little girl asked her, what are pajamas? She didn't even know. And so she's created this amazing organization with chapters all over the country, helping kids and caregivers. Now they've expanded into caregivers education and support too, around creating a reassuring bedtime. And how that can anchor a kid in their day if they're having a ton of uncertainty and uncontrollable circumstances. So we're a smaller company and we're a small partner for them, but I really love them and they love us, and we try to support their mission too. So I guess I got sidetracked
incredible
about that, because I was going to say
Yeah.
there are, since 2018 when we launched, there are now so many weighted blanket companies, and you can't go wrong with the weighted blanket. But this is what makes us different, and why I think that we stood out as a brand from so many
Right.
competitors.
Much more than a weighted blanket, right? Like there's the reality of how it's made, right? And that you're partnering with other people that really make a huge difference. You yourself are making a huge difference. And thinking about that butterfly effect of how all of those things then change the
Because I was
world.
thinking about like mental and emotional health. It's like
Yeah.
we don't exist by ourselves. We're also connected. And if we live in a world that doesn't work for everybody, like we can't be happy too.
Yes, I agree completely. And it's so funny you talked about the Scholastic, because yesterday I just went to our book fair with my son at the Scholastic Book Fair. And I'm often wondering about that. I'm often thinking about, kids that can't, purchase the books. And I know a lot of the teachers, and you can donate, and there's all sorts of things. But I love that pajama program. So I'd love to add that link I'll add some links of what we're talking about today, if that's okay.
Definitely.
Because I think there'd be a lot of people that would really love to be a part of a program like that. That's incredible. And just thinking about how that regulates a system for somebody that might not feel very regulated on the day to day.
Yeah. Yes, and their whole mission now, as they've shifted toward education for caregivers too, is about closing the gap in sleep equity, because there's a huge difference. Like kids at school who haven't had proper sleep, like they cannot learn, and it's so sad to hear what teachers say about kids falling asleep at school, or
I know it's hard. It is heartbreaking, and to think that there's this way to help make that different. You
hmm
know, that's
hmm
incredible. That's really incredible. So shifting gears, you talked when we first started, we talked about the recent study as
yeah,
well. So I would love to hear that as well on what came from the
found out.
study. Yes.
So we did want to get a little bit more clarity around the true impact of the weighted blankets, because we'll hear a lot of qualitative feedback from people telling us amazing stories, which are so great to hear, but we wanted to get more data. And so we did a study with a company called Friends, Frenz, and they make a brain band. They call it a brain band. It's a headband you wear to sleep, and it's tech. It's very like tech. It's AI based, and it's a sleep device in and of itself, so it can be used to improve your sleep. But it also has a ton of biometric data that it's gathering. So it's been found, I think it's 80%, 88% as reliable as being in a sleep lab hooked up to a bunch of monitors. So we partnered with them to do an at-home sleep study, and we had 40 participants sleeping with and without the blanket. And we didn't screen for people who were having particular sleep issues. This was just a broad public survey of people. I think had we selected people with sleep issues, we'd have even more dramatic results. But we did find that 80% or 78.5% of participants reported a positive effect on their sleep quality with the blanket. Sleep efficiency increased 92%. So that means less
Wow.
wake ups in the middle of the night, more long periods of sleep with less interruption. And then deep sleep duration increased by 10%. We had a 27% improvement in sleep onset latency. So that's in time it takes to fall asleep. And then people saw their readiness score improve. So that's physical recovery and readiness to start the day. Feeling ready to start your day improved by 10% with the blankets. So those were pretty great findings for us to see. So it's
Yes.
not for everybody all the time, but it's pretty good. And people have always asked me, like, who are weighted blankets for? Or I don't have insomnia. Is that for me? And I feel like these are for everybody with a body, because I mean, I read the news. I try not to, but I definitely do. And I start to go like, oh my God, what's happening?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And your body responds to that almost
Definitely.
instantly.
Definitely. So I want to feel safe and at home in my body, and this is a way that I can do that too. So beyond sleep. So we started, I think it was before we were recording even, we were talking about, I was saying that I'm really excited to now be talking more about mental health with our blankets. Although historically people have come to weighted blankets because they're looking for a sleep tool, because they do help with sleep. But for me and my journey with and my experience with them was more about the feeling of safety and calm in my body. And I think that's so important. And really, we can easily get stuck in fight or flight and even forget that we're there and just live every day like that. And so, carving some time out to take 5 or 10 minutes, even, and having a tool that helps you drop in faster and kind of calm your nervous system down and connect your mind and body and help you feel grounded and safe is really nice to have. The only thing
Yes.
is you have to remember to use it, because I have it at my house too, and sometimes I forget I have it.
Yes, yes, that's always it, right? It's like that idea of having your shoes right next to your bed, or
Yeah.
don't forget to do it. Yes, that is really an interesting component, because as you're talking, I was thinking about just after yoga, when you do the corpse pose and how your body feels so ready and so relaxed at that moment. And
Yeah.
to me, that feels very similar to
Yes.
how you would feel with a weighted blanket. And to be able to access that a lot easier than going through a
Full
60-minute
hour.
yoga class. Yeah. Although
Right.
I do promote that,
Yes.
to be able to have that in your life on a more consistent basis could be life changing for people. One of the things that I really focus a lot on with my clients and with the podcasts and webinars is that, we have limits with how busy we are, but there are things that we can do in our lives to give us these little points of getting our body regulated,
Mm-hmm.
and the more that we're doing that throughout the day, the better we're going to feel overall. The more we're going to be able to say, at noon, I have this. Not in 3 weeks from now, I'm going on vacation, but at noon, I can do this, or I can do it right now, right? I'm feeling stressed right now. Here's a tool. It works. The science is there. The evidence is there. It's incredible. And going back to what you were saying about the recovery and waking up, that people were reporting 10%. It might seem, for somebody just kind of looking in like, oh, 10%. Oh, what's that? That is significant. I have some sleep issues, which has a lot to do with structural issues, right? But I wake up and it's like, did I even sleep? Right. And so if there are some things like that for people that might not have a deviated septum or, problems like that, that would be incredible to have that change, to sleep better, to sleep longer, to not wake up, to fall asleep quicker. Overall, that has to have such a huge impact.
It's dramatically impactful on your life. I mean, I think that people are now very well aware of the importance of sleep in your overall health, both your mental health and your physical health. And even that knowledge can bring up more stress and anxiety about sleep, or like the struggle to not get it, which is counterproductive. So I don't want to talk too much about that because I think that we're well aware. But yes, to your point, like when you do have the experience of struggling to sleep or waking up having not gotten good sleep, I'm a very good sleeper and I always have been. And so on those experiences when I can't sleep well, I think, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is awful. I hate this feeling and this experience. And now I have so much empathy for what people go through every day who are really struggling to sleep. So kind of back to the empathy thing.
Yeah, circled right back into it of our, so when we experience those struggles, we can really connect to others. Yes, and even just having kids, right? That can give us like an idea of what it's like not to sleep and how our brains do not function the way they should. There can be some other things that impact that, right? But our brains are not functioning at the level that they need to be at that state. And our mood is obviously affected greatly. But one of the things I do ask as a therapist when people come to see me, one of the first things I ask is about sleep, because it can very much, if we're deprived of sleep for a long time, one, most people don't notice it. And number two, it can mimic depression. And so if if sleep is an issue, let's get that figured out first, because you might not actually need some of these other things that you might assume you need, but it might actually be related more to sleep than one would imagine.
Right. And I believe also with anxiety, do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because the lack of sleep somehow makes our brains move quicker because we're not getting regulated. And when we're in fight or flight, typically that part is where we become hypervigilant. And for a lot of us, that means more action, more thinking, more doing. Some of us, we have that fawn where we're frozen. But for a lot of people, anxiety means more thoughts, more of that action that also then stops us from sleeping well.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a negative loop.
Yes.
We did a study as well, an informal study where we were working with a grad student at Angelo State University in Texas, and they had 90 students test using the blankets, and those in the control group versus the 90 that used them saw statistically significant improvement in their anxiety. They were using them during the day, so each person had the blanket, was using it for 2 hours during the day to reduce anxiety in college students.
That's incredible too.
I'd love to. That they had to be sitting down somewhere during the day.
Yes, there's always these other potentials, but also go ahead.
The context of therapeutic settings too, when people are dealing with difficult emotions or conversations, having something in that setting that would help them feel more safe. And we have a person on our team. She comes and works our conferences with me, but she's a masseuse, and she just went through her training and uses the weighted blankets in trauma release because people feel more secure and their bodies release trauma more freely. So I don't think that's a use case where weighted blankets are actively being used, but it's something I'm really excited to explore further because I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, Elizabeth, when we first started talking a bit about it, that was one of the first things I was thinking is, oh, this would be really nice to have in our offices for people because, there are certain things that we can have that help with how somebody's feeling with regulating, right? We're there to help with that. There's other tools we can use, but having something that somebody could just reach for and even just seeing like, okay, how does that feel would be really, really interesting. Yeah. I would love to talk more about
Yeah, I'd love to
that.
talk about that too.
Yes. Yeah, that would be really incredible. So, Elizabeth, I know we are getting close to the end. I definitely appreciate you talking with me today. And I wanted to just ask if there's anything that you wanted to share with our listeners before we end.
Well, I'll share how to find our company, our balooliving.com. It's Baloo. And we have our website. We also ship to the UK and abroad, if any of your listeners are in Europe. And we have a special code for listeners today. What did I say it is?
Wisconsin Wellness.
Thank you. 10% off site wide with that code.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm extremely excited about the weighted blankets. Now even hearing more of that information because one of the things that I was apprehensive about is that hotness at night. Am I going to wake up and just be sweating? So that is huge.
Yeah.
That is so huge.
Well, temperature is
Incredible.
a really big deal with sleep. You need to stay
Yes.
cool for good sleep, with or without, like whatever your bedding situation is, it needs to be cool.
Yeah.
So that's a big part.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. All right. Well, thanks again, Elizabeth. It was nice talking with you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right. Take care.